Hey everybody, it's Christina of CraftyPaws. I'm here to share a little ATC that I've made up. This is of the little fairies from the Greeting Farm. And unfortunately, I don't have a process video to share with you guys because I had some technical camera issues. But I wanted to come on here and share with you guys the process, basically walk you through everything verbally, and hopefully that will be helpful for some of you guys. I started off with the background. It's thick watercolor paper. It's a Strathmore watercolor paper, which I will link to in the description box below. I find that that is great for ink blending because it's thick enough and absorbent enough to pick up the Tim Holtz Distress inks that I used. And first I cut the ATC base using the inside of this Pretty Pink Posh scallop frames. I used a smaller one and just used the inside like cutout of the frame. So I got this really cute little scalloped edge all the way around, and it turns out it's the perfect size for an ATC, which is 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. Then I blended on with my Tim Holtz Distress inks. I started with the darkest at the top. This is a chipped sapphire. And then I blended into Broken China, and then I blended into Worn Lipstick, and then lastly to Spun Sugar. And it gave me a really nice gradation of color, and I thought that would be pretty for kind of a magical grounding. I didn't want to do like a traditional green, so I thought the pink would be pretty and kind of magical, and then into the dark blue for the sky. And for the background here, you can see I die cut in some clouds, and that is from the Simon Says Stamp Cloud Bank. I popped back in some of the little insert cutouts here, here, and then a little bit here, which you can't see most of. And then otherwise I just use the outline, and I reuse, so like I use this much of it for the center, and then I reuse this little portion and this little portion as add-on pieces down here. So the cloud formation is longer or thicker than this. And then for the background, I wanted to do kind of the dandelions from this Greeting Farm Little Fairies stamp set. So I used this stamp for the base here. And I started to stamp this out and tried some heat embossing. So the little white portions, the like fluffy parts of the dandelions, I heat embossed using Versamark ink and the Recollection Snow embossing powder. And that came out well. The stems, though, I didn't want in white. I wanted to have in black. And I found it very difficult to, emboss, stamp up, emboss, but not emboss the other parts. So what I ended up doing was a little bit of a cheat, which I thought worked out great, because these jelly roll pens or glaze pens, this one is a glaze pen in black, looks a lot like heat embossing. There's actually kind of a shine to it and a little bit of texture like embossing has. So these little stems, I just doodled in these lines for the stems, and it worked out great. It looks very much like the embossing that was done. And then because I had smeared some embossing ink, the Versamark ink on this side, I couldn't get a crisp dandelion image. So what I ended up doing was using the Copic Opaque White. This is like a paint, and it's thick, and it dries kind of thick like embossing. So I just did little lines emanating from the center. And then to get good, clean white dots on the edges, I took a broken paintbrush. This has a nice, tip on it, and dipped that into that Copic Opaque White to do these little dots. And that worked out great. It was very similar. It ends up being very similar in texture, maybe a little bit rougher than the white embossing powder. And then to add little kind of magical fairy dust or, dandelion dust into the air, I decided I wanted to do more white dots. So I used an embossing pen. This works just like Versamark ink, but it's a Versamarker, and I used the bullet point nib and did little dots, and then used again the same white embossing powder, and those dots came out great. where I wanted little teeny tiny dots, I actually ended up using a white Uniball Signo gel pen, and that worked great too. So there's lots of different ways to get kind of that slight texture and finish of embossing with gel pens or opaque, Copic opaque white ink, or with glaze pens. So lots of different ways to get kind of that shine and that slight texture of embossing. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. And then for the focal points, obviously, I used 3 of the little fairies from this Greeting Farm little fairy set. I used this, and this little cutie, and I just colored them up with my Copic markers, fussy cut them out. I did go to the trouble of inking the edges with the Memento Dual marker in Tuxedo Black. And I find that that's great because it doesn't seep into the image. It doesn't kind of bleed out, but it gives a nice finished edge of black rather than the white cut edge of the paper. And I like doing that, especially when I'm fussy cutting and popping things up, because I don't want that kind of unfinished white edge look. I know those are kind of nitpicky details, but you know, if I'm going to be crafting, I want it to look as good as it possibly can. So I did that. And then just for some fun, I added some little white gel pen dots through their hair because I thought that gave them kind of a magical look. So that's my ATC card. I had so much fun making it and sharing it with you guys. I hope you all are having a wonderful crafty day. Thank you so much for watching.